On today's Locked On Jayhawks, can Kansas get it done on the road in Big 12 play as they play at Texas Tech on Big Monday?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence. Normally with Rock Chalk Sports Talk, though, I've officially retired from that, I guess, so to speak. And now you can just find me here with Locked On Jayhawks, anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. On today's episode, preview of Kansas at Texas Tech. We'll get into the top storylines, KU's road struggles, KU's health concerns, Texas Tech scouting report, matchups of the game, Hawks to Soar, and more. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. New customers join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kansas plays at Texas Tech, 8 o'clock Central Time on Big Monday. Another road game for KU. I think the first big storyline coming into this game has to be KU's health or lack thereof. So as I'm recording this on Sunday, we do not have full transparency. What is going to be the situation with Kevin McCullar? What's going to be the situation with Dajuan Harris, with Jamari McDowell? So all those become question marks, right? And with Kevin, it's tough to see if he couldn't go Saturday. Would he be available to go on tonight, right? That's a short turnaround. Maybe he wouldn't be available again until next Saturday. Then again, he went from missing game to playing 2 games back-to-back to missing a game. So it feels like this is something that's going to be kind of up and down. So who knows? With Dajuan, he played after the rolled ankle, so that would tell you that's good. But he did not look 100% agile and quick and everything like that with the rolled ankle. And who knows, with another day or two in between, does the ankle get more swelled up and harder to play on again? Then with Jamari McDowell, is he going to be back from being sick? And furthermore, is like, what if that sickness goes through the rest of KU? I believe there were other players who were sick recently. What if that travels around? What if this is a situation where it gets to a point where KU only has like 4 scholarship players available in this game? You know, that's like the worst case scenario. If like McDowell was still out, Dajuan and Kevin had to be out, and then somebody else got sick or something, that would be absolute bananas if that happened. I don't expect that to happen. I kind of feel like if I was, just having to guess, I would assume Dajuan's going to play. I don't know. I feel like Kevin would want to play, being that it's in Lubbock, but I don't know. He also had a tough game in Lubbock last year. So I feel like Kevin probably going to be out. Maybe McDowell can come back and maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. Certainly with a shorter bench, you'd think so. This is Grant McCasland's first matchup with Bill Self as a member of the Big 12. They did play actually a couple of years ago when Grant McCasland was at North Texas. That was in that ESPN Events Invitational. And Kansas won. That was their first round matchup, 71-59, before they lost in the second game to Dayton. Here's actually some fun trivia from that one. KU had 3 players score off the bench that game, totaling 8, 7, and 4 points individually. They were Mitch Lightfoot with 8. Jalen Wilson was 7. He was still coming off the bench at that point. And Zach Clements had 4 of them. How about that for the bench scores in the game for KU? But then KU versus road issues is another storyline here. Add to it the Texas Tech has that great home court environment, and KU is 1-4 on the road in Big 12 play. This does not become any easier to score one of those road wins. So it's just going to feel like it's going to continue to pile on if they lose this game. If you win this game, it's going to feel like, okay, maybe you're starting to try to figure things out. You have a 2 road game week 2. Can you at least go 1-1 in these 2 games? But it's a lot better if you win the first, because then you still have the option of getting to 2-0. Big 12 title race is kind of a storyline here for both these teams. Kansas sits a game back of Houston and half a game back of Iowa State. Texas Tech is half a game back of Kansas and 1 game back in the loss column of Houston. And obviously, Texas Tech, just like Iowa State, is fortunate too. They don't have to do a return trip to Lawrence. They don't have to go back to KU and play on the road. So that was a nice little optic in the schedule for both them and Iowa State. And when you look at these next 2 games, Tech is either basically a pick 'em or projected to lose on KenPom. But the final 6 for them, they're picked to win every game. That doesn't mean they will win every game, but theoretically, you win this one and you win all 6 of your final games they're projected to win, they could absolutely win the Big 12 conference. And like you look at their schedule, you look at Iowa State's schedule, it's a little easier than Houston's and Kansas once things are going to be all said and done. That could be beneficial to them. And they really are a true Big 12 title contender. For the Texas Tech scouting report, they come in at 17-6 on the season, 6-4 in Big 12 play. They're ranked top 40 overall on KenPom. The non-con was pretty horrendous for the schedule. They did play 2 top 100 opponents. They lost to both of them. They had 0 top 100 wins. The closest was an overtime win over Michigan, who's ranked 103 right now. The 2 top 50 teams they played were Butler and Villanova, both those losses. But so far in conference play, they've had a real strong start, although recently just had a bit of a skid. 5-1 to start. They had wins at Texas versus Oklahoma State, versus Kansas State, versus BYU, and at Oklahoma. And then there was a blowout loss in between there to Houston. Since that point, they lost 3 straight games, though, TCU, Cincinnati, Baylor, before winning most recently by 7 on Saturday against UCF. So that's how they sit at 6-4 in the league. What they do well, they're the number 1 offense in Big 12 only games so far in the conference. They're also top 15 over on the country, barely outside of the top 10 in the country in offensive adjusted efficiency on KenPom. They're shooting over 40% from 3 in Big 12 games. So that's a big reason why they've done so well. They're a really good shooting team. And they're still top 5 in 2-point percentage offense, and they are number 1 in free throw percentage offense, which helps them overall. They are the number 2 effective field goal percentage offense in league action. They also don't turn it over a ton. And they have the second lowest turnover rate on offense in Big 12 play, meaning that they're maximizing the amount of shots they get. And it obviously helps when you take a lot of threes. You're not entering the ball in the post as much. You're not making as many tight passes, so you're not going to turn it over as much, theoretically. And that allows them to win the volume game even more when you fire up that many threes. And they're also a strong passing team, top 60 in the country in assist to made field goal ratio. Defensively, they do a great job not fouling and not sending teams to the free throw line, and they're good at non-steal turnovers, taking charges and things like that. What they haven't done well, though, is defense. It's odd because with Chris Beard, you kind of got used to Texas Tech being this like elite of the elite defensive team with offenses that were a little bit more shaky. It's opposite with this team, which is also weird because Grant McCasland at North Texas had like one of the best defenses in the country. But they're only 13th in the Big 12 of the 14 teams in defensive efficiency so far in Big 12 games. They're outside the top 80 nationally, and they're last in the Big 12 games in defensive rebounding rate. So that's something KU could take advantage of maybe, which also ranks 271st in the country. They don't get blocks or steals. There's a thing on CBB Analytics called Hakeem percentage, like named after Hakeem Olajuwon, where it's the combination of block plus steal percentage. Typically, if you have a higher rate, that means I don't know. There's a lot of positives that can come from that, right? You're creating chaos as a defense, right? They're in the 10th percentile, so they don't get a lot of either of those. They've only been average in 2-point defense and turnover rate defense in conference play, so even their more strengths are just average overall, and they have not been a great offensive rebounding team either. So if you look at the rebounding battle, after KU had a bit of a struggle against Baylor, maybe you can get back to it in this one. For the personnel for Texas Tech, the point guard is Joe Toussaint. He's been such a great add for the team from the portal. He averages 12.7 points, 4.2 assists on 42, 31, 86 shooting splits. So not ultra efficient, good free throw shooter, but solid defender, gets him in the right spots. Then you have Pop Isaacs, who is a 6'2" guard. He's kind of the star of the show as the off guard. He'll play the backup point when Toussaint's not in there, but he leads the team at 16.9 points per game, and he adds 3.7 assists, 3.1 rebounds. He's only shooting 36% from the floor, but it's because he's at 32.8% from 3 on insanely high volume, 7.5 3-point attempts per game. Bit of a chucker at times. He'll shoot long range ones, so you really have to get out on him. But when he's on, like he was last year when you played him in Lubbock, it's tough to beat because he shoots it at such high volume. Very similar to Tyler Perry, who we saw go off against KU, which is a little bit scary there. 6'5" Kerwin Walton will play the 3 and the 4. He averages about 8.2 points per game. Not much else, but he's a good shooter. 54% from 3. Chance McMillan, he'll slot in at the 2 and the 3. He averages 10.3 points per game, 3.6 rebounds. He shoots 43% from 3 on high volume. Then you have Darian Williams, who is a 6'6" wing, who plays the 4. He gets 9.4 points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 assists per game. Just does a little bit of everything. He's also been the team's best defender, according to Evan Miyakawa's website, with defensive BPR. So Darian Williams is certainly somebody who's a winning player. Also very efficient, not high volume, but 44, 39, 86 shooting splits. Just a winning player. He'll even, in a pinch, move down and play some small ball five. They can also use 6'7" Robert Jennings as a small ball five. And between Williams and Jennings, they've played that way for about 38% of their minutes at the five over the last 5 games, according to KenPom. So they will get a lot of time in there with a small ball five, but it is completely opposite when they don't. For a majority of the time, you're going to see a 7-footer in there with Warren Washington, who is a stud inside defender who transferred in from Arizona State. He's getting 10.3 points, 7.7 rebounds, 1.6 blocks, and shooting 62% from the floor on not a ton of high volume, but just a really good player and can impact the defense on that end. Let's get to our matchups of the game and Hawks to Soar on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. First, we're brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. You can bet on KU to win the Big 12 if you're still a believer, or to make a Final Four to win a national title game. You can get specific same-game parlays with the KU games, with NBA games. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Continuing on with Locked On Jayhawks with our matchups of the game, then we get to our Hawks to Soar players we think can have big matchups here or have favorable matchups for KU. Matchup number 1, transition tries. So Tech doesn't run at a big tempo. Interestingly enough, Grant McCasland at North Texas was like the slowest team in the country, like even slower than Virginia. This year, they've played a little bit faster, and I think part of that is adjusting to the personnel, having more of an offensive team and a team that can really shoot it and space it. But they're still on the bottom end of their tempo ratings in the Big 12 right now. You look at in the country, Texas Tech ranks 273rd in terms of tempo rating, according to KenPom. And you look at Big 12 only games, they are 11th, including 11th in average possession length on the offensive end of the court. So they're not a very fast team. And they only average 6 points in fast break per game in conference play. So 6 fast break points per game in Big 12 games, according to CBB Analytics. That only ranks in the 10th percentile of the country. So they're not doing it a ton. Kansas does 12.8 fast break points per game, both overall and in conference play. And both of those rank 88th percentile in college basketball. So you have a very stark difference, one team near the top, one team near the bottom in terms of what they get from the fast break. And for Kansas, there is going to be a bit of a math game here. They're not shooting like one of the highest percentage of threes in the country, but they definitely shoot them at a very solid volume and shoot them at a very high efficiency. It's going to be tough to match twos with their threes. And so one way that you can make up for that a little bit is getting out in transition more, getting some easy buckets and countering in one way that you should have an edge on paper. Although I guess if Kevin McCullar doesn't go, that is one less good transition player for KU who can both handle, pass, and shoot the ball in transition. Number 2 is Kansas on the glass. You got worked by Baylor, 42-25 in rebounding. It was bottom 5 games for KU in both offensive rebound and defensive rebound rate in the same game for Kansas. And obviously, if Kevin is hurt, again, this is one that could have an impact in because I don't know if Hunter Dickinson is your best overall rebounder, best defensive rebounder. Kevin McCullar is either second or third at both offensive and defensive rebounding and overall rebounding, right? And so that certainly hurts you on the glass. Well, when Texas Tech, who has not been like a great rebounding team so far this season, but when they grab 28% or more of their offensive misses, they're 12-1. When they don't, they're 5-5. You basically, it makes sense, right? I mean, they shoot threes at a very high volume. You can't give this offense extra shots. And what tends to happen when you give up offensive rebounds to a team? Leads to a lot of open threes after the offensive rebound. Something that Texas Tech will take advantage of and kind of murder you on from the outside. So you give up an offensive rebound, a lot of times it is going to lead to a kick out and an open 3 and a made 3 for Texas Tech. On the other basket, though, Tech has not been good either, but they're 12-0 when holding opponents under a 30% offensive rebound rate. They're 5-6 when they don't. So for KU, especially if you're without Kevin McCullar, and I know that almost makes it harder in rebounding, but for the guys like KJ Adams, Johnny Furphy, Parker Brown, if Jamari McDowell is going to play, I think McDowell is actually the best rebounder among McDowell, Timberlake, and Jackson. We'll see if he plays or not. You have to put an emphasis on rebounding in this game because A, it's something that on paper you could have an advantage in, but B, if you don't, it could be a long night in Lubbock. Number 3 is switching defense and guarding the three-point line. This is such a clash of KU inside. Kansas averages 11 more points per game in the paint than Texas Tech versus Tech, who gets a ton of their production from the outside, whereas Kansas doesn't shoot a lot of threes. And so far this season, Texas Tech has 10 games where they've shot 40% or better from three. They also have 4 more at 37% or better, meaning they have 14 games this year. So more than half of their games, they've shot 37% or better from three. They also had 9 games making double-digit threes, 10 or more. They do it from all over, and they're 38.1% from three in Big 12 only games above the break. But it is unworldly how they've shot from the corner in league games. Texas Tech right now from the corner per CBB Analytics in Big 12 games is shooting 49% from three. That is best in the nation during conference play. You have to be able to get out on the corner. You have to be able to switch. And Kansas did an excellent job for the majority of the game against Baylor, who's another team who shoots a lot of threes and shoots them at a high percentage. And if you do that in this one, you'll feel good. But what did we see over the last minute or so of the game? And there were some breakdowns for KU. And part of that was Nick Timberlake. I'll be very interested to see what his level of play will be in this game because on one hand, he gave you more production over the overhaul of the game with 8 points than Elmarko Jackson did. But in a game where switching and defense is going to be more important, do we see more Elmarko Jackson in this game? Do we see a chance for Jamari McDowell if he's back from the injury? But KU has to do a good job switching, working hard around screens, going over screens, getting up to the ball handler, cutting him off. You can't give up open ones because Tech will just bury you if you do. Player matchup here is Hunter Dickinson against Warren Washington, the center for Texas Tech. So last season, these two actually met. It was when Hunter Dickinson was with Michigan and when Warren Washington was with Arizona State. And neither had like a big game offensively. Dickinson had 14 points on 6 of 12. He only had 5 rebounds and he had 3 turnovers. Washington had 4 points. He only took 3 shots. He had 8 rebounds and 2 blocks. Honestly, if Texas Tech, you told them that's what you could get in this game, that you would hold Hunter to 14 points, especially without Kevin McCullar, you'd only have 5 rebounds. I think you would gladly take that if you were Tech, even though you're not getting a ton of offensive production in that comparison with Warren Washington. But here's the thing for KU, especially if Kevin McCullar's out. I don't know if Kansas has the offensive firepower to win a game like this on the road without Hunter Dickinson going for 18, 20, 22 points, right? And that becomes difficult because Washington is a good defender. Now, again, go back to the idea that Texas Tech has played almost 40% of their minutes over the last 5 games with a small ball 5. That'll be difficulty for Hunter Dickinson guarding on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, you should be able to bury them inside. Now, maybe Tech lessens that number a little bit there, but that'll be an opportunity for Hunter to certainly carve out a big advantage for KU. One weird thing is in Big 12 play, Tech has allowed 68.8% at the rim, which is bottom 8% in college basketball. But I think that's less about Warren at center. I think that's more about when they play small ball 5, and that's more about the guards for Tech don't do a great job of preventing penetration and giving up lanes to the rim. And I think that's part of what it is, that it becomes apparent that KU's other players have an advantage in certain ways, which we'll get to here in Hawks to Soar, but it's just without Kevin McCullar. You know, if you have a couple players for Tech who are not good defenders on the wing, well, if KU's playing a lot of Elmarko Jackson and Nick Timberlake on the wing, how much is KU going to really be able to take advantage? So Hunter has to be able to go off for KU in this game. All right, let's finish up with Hawks to Soar. Jayhawks, we think, can have big games for KU on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. First, we are brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Guaranteed Fit and eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Finishing up Hawks, the Soar KU players we think are set up to have big games. Kevin, if he's healthy, and then Johnny Furphy. So Tech's two wings, Kerwin Walton and Chance McMillan, they both have negative DBPR rankings, grades, metrics on Evan Miyakawa's site. They've not been good defenders on the wing. So KU should be able to exploit the wing matchups a little bit. One thing I am worried, though, Furphy's not really somebody who's going to drive you off the dribble, take advantage of that as much, but maybe they get lost on off-the-ball stuff. Kevin, if you were playing in this game, would be set up to possibly have a really big game. The unfortunate part is Tech's best defenders. Warren Washington is a center on Hunter Dickinson. Their four-man is obviously, he's their best defender on Evan Miyakawa's website, and that makes it tough on KJ Adams when you look at their play at the four with Williams. And then at the point guard spot, Joe Toussaint's been a solid defender. So, this game really could come down to Johnny Furphy, which is tough when you have a freshman who's struggled shooting the last two games, now playing on the road, and one of Nick Timberlake, Marco Jackson, Jamari McDowell. And that's a scary place to be in a spot where KU has really struggled on the road. But I do think Furphy is set up to have a big game. I've liked how aggressive he's continued to be shooting the ball, even though they haven't fallen these last two games. The process is good there. They'll start falling again, but there's no guarantee it'll be this game, right? They could start falling next game or in a week from now, right? So, but I do think on paper, it is a matchup that could be good for him to get him out of his slump a little bit. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. We'll be back for a KU Texas Tech recap later with LOJ.